In October of 1994, 3 student filmmakers arrived in Burkittsville, Maryland to interview locals about the legend of the Blair Witch.
All I'm saying is that you got us lost.
No, I know we're not lost.
Oh, you knew that yesterday, too, and you knew that twice.
Look,
guys, it's cool. It's cool.
We're going more or less this way.
1 year later, their footage was found, but the 3 were never seen again.
Remember when a bunch of shaky cam footage and snot-nosed close-ups made the whole world think it was real? Back in 1999, before TikTok, found footage horror took the world by storm with a movie that cost less than a used car and made more than The Matrix. The Blair Witch Project wasn't just a film, it was a cultural earthquake. Born in the age of dial-up internet and printed MapQuest directions, this low-budget horror flick fooled an entire generation into thinking it was a real documentary gone wrong. And if you thought you knew everything about Blair Witch, think again. From real missing posters to panic calls to the police, the making of this film was just as terrifying as the story itself. Stick around for fact number 6. It'll make you question whether any of it was ever just acting. And hey, if you love creepy cinema throwbacks like this, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more where that came from. The missing posters were real. Like really real. Before the world knew it was fiction, the Blair Witch Project was already terrifying people. Not in theaters, but on lampposts and diner walls. In the summer of 1999, moviegoers stumbled upon missing persons posters for Heather Donahue, Joshua Leonard, and Michael C. Williams. These weren't fan art or parody flyers. They were part of the movie's guerrilla marketing campaign, and they worked a little too well. The filmmakers listed the cast as missing presumed dead on IMDb. Heather's mom even received condolence cards. How did this happen? Because the internet was still young, and the line between reality and fiction hadn't been blurred this badly before. Artisan Entertainment, the film's distributor, doubled down on the illusion. Their official website was designed like a real missing person report, complete with fake police files, diary entries, and found footage clues. It racked up over 160 million page views in the first year, unheard of in a pre-social media world. It was so convincing that some people actually called the cops, thinking this was a genuine case of a snuff film slipping into theaters. Turns out, all it took to terrify America wasn't a monster, just a printer, some duct tape, and the internet's ability to believe everything it reads. The script was basically just a map. Most horror movies have scripts full of blood, screams, and fake Latin chants, but the Blair Witch Project, its script was more like a choose-your-own-terror adventure. Instead of handing the actors a full screenplay, directors Daniel Myrick and Eduardo Sanchez gave them a loose outline and GPS coordinates. That's right. Each day, Heather, Josh, and Mike would wake up, check their handheld GPS, and hike to their next scene, hidden in milk crates in the woods. Inside were vague instructions like, you're tired, you're lost, and you're starting to think the others are the problem. They weren't told what the others had been told, so all arguments, meltdowns, and mental breakdowns were real reactions, not rehearsed. The tension, 100% authentic, and the dialogue, almost entirely improvised. The cast shaped the story with their emotions, confusion, and paranoia, while freezing in the Maryland woods, sleeping in tents, and having their food rations limited by the crew on purpose. No wonder Heather's iconic tear-streaked monologue feels so raw. She wasn't acting. She was starving, scared, and absolutely over it. Turns out the scariest part of the movie wasn't the witch. It was realizing no one was coming to yell, cut. They got lost. For real? You'd think that a movie about getting lost in the woods would have at least one guy with a compass who knew what he was doing. Spoiler alert, nope. During filming in the Black Hills Forest of Maryland, the actors, Heather Donahue, Josh Leonard, and Michael C. Williams, actually got lost for hours. More than once. Despite having GPS directions planted by the crew, the terrain was unfamiliar, disorienting, and dense. There were no film trailers, no directors holding coffee, just the 3 of them, a camcorder, and the slowly dawning realization that they might actually be alone. One day the GPS failed completely, and they ended up hiking several miles off course. The crew had to mount a minor search party before finally tracking them down. But here's the twist. The directors were thrilled. Why? Because that fear, frustration, and exhaustion, it all made for better footage. Their reactions in scenes where they're yelling, cursing, and melting down weren't scripted. They were legit. Imagine being cold, wet, hungry, and lost in the woods while holding a camera and being told to keep rolling. To quote Josh from the film, "I see why you like this wood so much, it's not like creepy or anything." The irony practically writes itself. In the end, getting lost became part of the method. Method misery, that is. That snot-covered monologue was totally improvised. You know the scene. Close up, darkness, heavy breathing, eyes wide with terror, and way too much nose slime. Heather Donahue's terrified confession to the camera became the film's most iconic and most parodied moment. But here's the thing, it wasn't in the script. That raw emotional breakdown was entirely improvised by Donahue during a night shoot, huddled alone in her tent. The filmmakers had told her to deliver a heartfelt message to the families of the missing, but the tears, the shaking voice, and yes, the waterfall of snot, all came from a very real place of fear and exhaustion. Heather later admitted she was genuinely terrified at that point. She thought the crew might leave her in the woods overnight. She hadn't eaten properly in days, and she was done. So she grabbed the camera, hit record, and delivered a raw, chilling performance that made it into the final cut, almost untouched. Ironically, what made it so powerful? The closeness, the emotion, the mucus, also made it meme material. It's been spoofed by everyone from Scary Movie to late-night comedians. Still, you can laugh all you want. But remember, that monologue cost her 2 nostrils worth of dignity and earned her a permanent place in horror history. It cost $60,000 to make and earned $250 million. In an industry where studios throw $100 million at CGI monsters and hope for the best, the Blair Witch Project proved that less really is more, especially when it comes to profit. The film was shot for a measly $60,000. That's less than the catering budget for a single day on a Marvel set. The crew was tiny, the equipment was cheap, and the actors were paid just $1,000 a week. They used real tents, real flashlights, and most of the time, real fear. Even the infamous stick figures handcrafted on the spot with twigs and string. But here's where it gets insane. After a bidding war at Sundance, Artisan Entertainment picked up the rights and invested in an ingenious marketing campaign. Then came the release, and the movie made nearly $250 million worldwide. That's a return on investment of over 400,000%. It became one of the most profitable films in cinema history, proving that you don't need a huge budget to terrify people. Just a camcorder, some unknown actors, and a killer viral myth. So yeah, while Heather, Josh, and Mike were out in the woods, eating cold beans and crying into the camera, someone in a suit was laughing all the way to the bank. The map disappearance wasn't in the script and caused a real fight. Remember that scene where Mike confesses to kicking the map into the river and the group totally loses it? Turns out the emotions weren't just acting, because that scene wasn't planned. In real life, the cast was already starving, sleep-deprived, and annoyed with each other. The missing map storyline was originally supposed to lead somewhere different, but one day, Mike Williams decided to actually get rid of the map. No heads up to the directors, no heads up to his castmates. He just tossed it into the woods. For real. When Heather and Josh found out, they were livid, especially Josh, who reportedly got so angry that he threatened to quit the production entirely. The filmmakers had to step in behind the scenes to cool everyone down and convince Josh to stay. But here's the kicker. The cameras kept rolling, and the result was one of the rawest, most chaotic moments in the film. The argument is filled with real frustration, real screaming, and real confusion, and it's magnetic to watch. What was meant to be a fictional breakdown turned into a genuine power struggle between 3 tired, terrified actors, all over a piece of paper they weren't even using properly anyway. In the end, Mike's impulsive map drop became one of the most talked about moments in found footage history, but off screen, yeah, let's just say they weren't handing out high fives after the take. The crew stalked the actors at night. Ever feel like someone's watching you in the woods? For the cast of the Blair Witch Project, that wasn't paranoia. It was the crew, literally creeping around their tents. Part of the film's power comes from the actors' authentic reactions to terror, and to get those, the directors went full haunted camp counselor mode. At night, while Heather, Josh, and Mike tried to sleep, Often cold, hungry, and emotionally frayed, the crew would sneak through the forest, shaking their tents, snapping twigs, playing creepy, childlike sounds, and even blasting unsettling noises through boomboxes hidden in the trees. None of this was warned in advance. The scene where the tent gets violently shaken while they scream and run into the darkness? Completely real. They were told to keep filming no matter what happened. No retakes, no explanations. The sounds of children laughing, rocks piling up outside their tents, or voices in the distance. Those were planted with military precision, all designed to crank up the actors' fear without giving them any context. It was like being in an experimental haunted house, but with cameras and no safe word. The result? The cast's anxiety on screen wasn't acting. It was sleep-deprived, terror-induced confusion, and it's part of what made the movie feel so disturbingly real. Turns out, when you blur the line between fiction and reality, even your own actors start believing they're in a horror movie. Josh's disappearance was a total surprise to Josh. In most movies, and when your character gets killed off, there's a script, maybe a meeting, possibly a fruit basket. In the Blair Witch Project, Josh Leonard found out he was being written out by waking up to a note in a milk crate. Midway through filming, Josh's character mysteriously disappears from the group. What the audience didn't know, and what Josh himself didn't know, was that the filmmakers planned this in secret. One night after shooting, they pulled him aside privately and told him, "You're done. You're not going back to camp tomorrow. You're gone." He was whisked away, and Heather and Mike were left genuinely confused and freaked out. The isolation, the paranoia, it all deepened because now they were literally missing a person, both in character and in real life. But that's not even the craziest part. Later in the film, Heather finds a small bundle of sticks tied with fabric. Inside is a bloody human tooth and hair. That was Josh's real hair, and his actual tooth, extracted by a dentist with his permission. Just for the scene, let that sink in. A real tooth in a movie made for $60,000. So next time you're watching and Heather recoils in horror at that creepy bundle, remember, the disgust on her face wasn't acting. She was holding a co-star's molar. Method acting? Try dental horror. Audiences got sick. And that was the plan. When the Blair Witch Project hit theaters in 1999, people didn't just scream, they vomited. Across the country, moviegoers reported feeling dizzy, nauseous, even physically ill. Some theaters had to post warning signs about the film's intense, shaky cam footage. Why? Because the entire movie was shot on handheld, consumer-grade cameras operated by the actors themselves while stumbling through forests, running from unseen terrors, and spinning around in total panic. The result? A visual style that felt raw, immediate, and for some, motion sickness on steroids. But here's the twist. The filmmakers knew this would happen. In fact, they counted on it. The chaotic camera movement wasn't just a budget choice, it was an aesthetic weapon. It created the illusion of authenticity, of urgency, of danger. It made you feel like you were right there, trapped in the woods, heart pounding, stomach lurching. And audiences didn't just watch the fear, they physically felt it. Critics were split. Some praised the immersion, while others warned viewers to pop Dramamine beforehand. But one thing was clear. The Blair Witch Project wasn't just a film. It was an experience, and if you walked out dizzy and sweating, congratulations. That's exactly what they wanted. The ending was made up on the spot, and it haunted everyone. The final scene of the Blair Witch Project is burned into horror history. Heather rushes into an abandoned house screaming Mike's name. Her camera drops, she screams again, and in the final chilling frame we see Mike standing silently in the corner. Cut to black. No monster, no jump scare, just a silent figure, frozen like a statue. And yet somehow, it's one of the scariest endings in modern film. But here's the kicker. That iconic image? It wasn't planned. On the day of filming, the directors decided last minute to change the ending. Originally, the plan involved some kind of bloody confrontation or more chaotic footage, but it felt too obvious, too standard. So instead, they told Mike to stand in the corner of the basement. No explanation to Heather. They just let the camera roll as she entered, disoriented and screaming, only to discover him in that eerie position. The inspiration? A detail dropped earlier in the film, the legend of Rustin Parr, the local hermit who supposedly made children stand in the corner while he killed the others. Viewers who remembered that bit of lore felt an instant chill. Those who didn't just left the theater deeply unsettled, with a feeling that something terrible had just happened. They just didn't know what. There was no CGI, no music cue, just silence, stillness, and a sense of complete helplessness. It was ambiguous, it was terrifying, and it became the blueprint for dozens of horror endings after it. Sometimes the scariest thing you can do is nothing at all. Bonus fact, the Blair Witch was never meant to be seen. And that made it scarier. For a movie called The Blair Witch Project, you'd expect to actually see the witch, right? Well, you almost did during one of the most intense scenes in the film, when Heather and Mike are running through the woods in total chaos. Heather screams, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck is that?" That wasn't scripted. She was reacting to something. The crew had actually placed a figure off to the side, wearing a white shroud meant to be a brief glimpse of the witch. But here's the twist. The camera never catches it. Mike, who was holding the camera, was too panicked, disoriented, or just confused to pan left. And in that moment, they accidentally created one of the most brilliant decisions in horror. They didn't show the monster. The directors reviewed the footage and realized it was perfect. By showing nothing, the audience's imagination filled in the blanks with something far worse than prosthetics or CGI ever could. And that's why the Blair Witch Project works so well. The real horror doesn't come from what's on screen. It comes from what your brain creates in the dark, just out of frame. No witch, no explanation, just fear. Remember when a bunch of shaky cam footage and snot-nosed close-ups made the whole world think it was real? Back in 1999, before TikTok, found footage horror took the world by storm with a movie that cost less than a used car and made more than The Matrix. The Blair Witch Project wasn't just a film, it was a cultural earthquake. Born in the age of dial-up internet and printed MapQuest directions, this low-budget horror flick fooled an entire generation into thinking it was a real documentary gone wrong. And if you thought you knew everything about Blair Witch, think again. From real missing posters to panic calls to the police, the making of this film was just as terrifying as the story itself. Stick around for fact number 6. It'll make you question whether any of it was ever just acting. And hey, if you love creepy cinema throwbacks like this, hit that like button and subscribe. We've got more where that came from.